I don't think that anything's going to happen with North Korea, and I'll tell you why. Iran is the target, and there's a great dichotomy between the two. North Korea is a regime that is the most tyrannical in the entire world. There is no other country that is oppressed and as devastated economically, socially, and politically as North Korea is under Kim Jong-il. And yet, Rumsfeld and followed on by Gates have guaranteed North Korea we will not seek regime change and we will not use military power to overthrow them. It's a guaranteed, of immunity, essentially. And yet Iran, which has a very, at least a fourth of the people are very, very pro-Western, is a very modern society, has been strangled by sanctions, is into the grip of a clerical, radical Muslim group. But still, they still have elections, even though it has been, and most elections in almost all countries are rigged in favor of the ruling class. But nevertheless, this is a very civilized country.
Obviously, you don't have time to get into it right now, but for those that don't know, there's chaos in Iran right now. Many protesters have been shot, about 7. And
15 now have died.
15 now, and then YouTube, Facebook, those things, all except for Twitter, have been taken down. The other thing is, though, the government's involved. There's information indicating the CIA is involved with the opposition on the other side.
That's right, and then nothing's more exemplary of this than the forged letter that surfaced yesterday in Iran, claiming to be one of the ministers writing to the Ayatollah, explaining to him what the real votes were in the skewing of the election and giving Ahmadinejad only 5 million some votes. Now, the letter is a forgery. It's a very good one. It's a fraud. And yet, it's covering material that's essentially true, that it's skewed, but the actual details are so falsified, so imbalanced that it's not believable. So this is a very sophisticated way in which black operations do disinformation. They did the same thing to American conspiratorialists in America over Obama. Obama is an illegal alien, born in Kenya, his mother falsified his birth certificate in Hawaii, and the establishment has sealed all of his records. His university records, where he was a foreign student, he got a foreign scholarship to Occidental.
You mean to attract them that way? To get people to focus on a certain thing?
No.
Okay.
They've covered it up so that it will not be available to the American people.
Okay.
In other words, they've made a deal with Obama when they decided to run him as a politician. We'll cover for you. Yeah, we know that you're not eligible to be president, but we'll make sure that no one, not even the Supreme Court, will rule on this. We can guarantee we control all these aspects. But
that's why they don't mention that on Fox. And they're supposedly attacking Obama, Sean Hannity.
Right.
They don't bring up certain things that we've brought up. Yeah.
That's right. And Fox will not bring up anything about the involvement of our government in 9/11 or Oklahoma City bombing. In other words, this is what we call controlled opposition, not true opposition. They only give you a certain portion of the picture. Mm-hmm. Media is always manipulated by what they omit, what they fail to tell you. But remind me where we were going to when we were talking about Obama.
Well, I read that for debt relief we're giving, and this is the critical part of the big picture here, at least what I'm, as much info as we can get out, giving Chinese fighter jet technology for debt relief, things of this nature, all the money that we've borrowed from China, it's in the trillions of dollars. It's a debt we will not be able to pay back, and we'll be scrambling just to pay for the interest. And it's like, what is this leading up to? The Chinese are going to be coming in here with their cargo when they develop the North American Union, if they get that far with the superhighway. So where do you see the threat in terms of this jeopardization of our national security? For example, Los Angeles, Hu Jintao's son runs that scanning company that's going to be scanning the Chinese cargo coming in. They got a no-bid contract from Homeland Security, and this came out in the news 4 to 5 months ago. What's going on here?
Well, it's going on at multiple levels with China. The transfer of technology has been ongoing ever since I started publishing the World Affairs Brief clear back in the 1990s. For example, I had a subscriber who was an engineer at Hughes Aerospace, and he wrote me one day and he said, look, the Chinese are crawling all over this plant. We have to have security badges, a clearance to work on these high-tech military projects, and we've got Chinese military and engineers coming and looking over our shoulders. He said, last week we went and complained to the plant manager about the Chinese being here. And what did they do? Locked us out of the company, the plant, on Saturdays, and gave the Chinese the run of the plant on Saturday. Same thing happened at General Dynamics. Mm-hmm. You realize that we still allow interchange between scientists to our top-level weapons labs, Los Alamos and Sandia and other weapons labs. You and I can't even get in there as ordinary Americans.
No, they can't.
Even with a security clearance, but we give them security clearances. So we have been facilitating the transfer of technology. We did a joint development project, Boeing and Zvezda Strela, the weapons lab of Russia, on the F-35 fighter. What was the purpose of that? Was to make sure that the technology of that fighter jet got transferred to Russia, and that's where it gets to China.
There's also other things we've got that deal with controlling their populations, like sound weapons. I remember reading that last year.
We've developed sound weapons that have, very effective at mass control.
Intel made them a supercomputer too.
Yeah, and help them actually tyrannize their people. We allow weapons and prison technology to help them in their gulags. But this isn't strictly, critics on the left of the globalism, and we appreciate their friendship. I come from the libertarian side. But critics on the left view this only as greedy capitalism. This is all for money, but it's much deeper than that. We didn't go into Iraq.
Or shortly said it was all about Bush.
Well, we didn't go into Iraq because of oil only. Oil was one of the motives, to be sure, and it's still playing out that way. But it has to do mostly with a World War III scenario that's coming up. In other words, to control oil when Russia and China are the enemy, because they are dependent, or not Russia, but China is dependent on highly dependent on foreign importation.
Do you believe this is coming? This is serious. We need to talk about it.
But China is being set up not only to become an enemy, because it already is. I mean, Russia and China have not been developing and hiding their weapons capabilities from the West for years because they are allies. It is our government that continues to promote this propaganda that they're allies. Our government knows these people are preparing for war. We've had multiple defectors from both China and Russia telling our CIA that every time they have a military major operation, a maneuver, they use and start the maneuver with a simulated nuclear attack on America.
EMP? That would cause some sort of a takedown of the grid?
That begins with an EMP attack. 3 or 4 nuclear weapons strategically placed over the United States, blankets the nation with a wave of electromagnetic pulses that gets into the power lines, sends a high voltage signal down, and fries everything. Unless they're hardened, as our military gear is now hardened against EMP. But our military, according to defectors, our military sites, including our communication sites, are going to be targeted by actual nuclear weapons. So what EMP doesn't take down, the actual nuclear weapons will. And so we are being set up, in my opinion, and this is my warning to the world, for a preemptive nuclear strike from Russia and China. And I think it will come no earlier than the middle of the next decade. I don't think China is ready to back Russia up on this. Russia is nearly ready. They're just simply destabilized by not knowing how many secret weapons the U.S. is developing and whether or not they've stolen enough technology to be able to take on. The Russians have the advantage of having about 80% of the technology we do in terms of advanced weaponry, but they have about a 10-to-1 advantage on conventional weapons, so that after the nuclear weapons are used up, then they have a tremendous conventional weapons advantage. In addition, Russia, for example, to show their bad faith as an ally, has been building since the early 1990s huge underground bunker cities, 2 of them in the Ural Mountains. One is called Yazvinsky Mountain, and the other is Yamanto Mountain. These areas are approximately the size of the Washington, D.C. metro area underground.
Underground.
Now, these are not mining establishments. They have multiple railroad tracks going in. We have never in our satellites seen any mining cars coming in or out of that. It's all been box cars, large, extra long freight cars, taking in missiles. My contacts in the government say that they believe that this is, in fact, underground factories to continue the production of nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons even after the beginning of a nuclear war.
So in Russia, they have underground bases, too, and places where bunkers where they're developing lots of different weapons.
That's right. Now, when this article about Yamato Mountain surfaced in the New York Times, front page, 1997, they queried the CIA about it, and the CIA said, oh, we're not worried about it, it's defensive. Well, to this day, there's not been a single person in our weapons inspection team that's been allowed into Yamato Mountain. So how do they know it's defensive?